Hi, what's up? My name is Mia, and this is my first video on my channel. I literally don't even know the name of this channel, but this is basically just to talk to people who are also going into like the creative writing major and maybe like if they're transfer students and kind of just to like talk about that. I'm a sophomore, so I'm going to be a second semester sophomore. My previous college did not have a creative writing program. They actually didn't even have an English program. I actually went to university to go into education, and then I later decided to go into creative writing. So that's just like a little introduction. I'm currently enrolled at Purchase University, and this is actually the short story that I gave to them to get into their program, their creative writing program, which I got into. Everyone clap. Thank you. Thank you. Um, which I got into. Just a little background too. I did apply as a transfer student number one, and also I applied in the spring year, so that kind of gave me like an easier shot into getting in. Um, Otherwise, though, like my grades were also really good, so as a transfer student, the 2 semesters of school, my GPA was a 3.6, which is pretty good for a college student. I'm not trying to brag about myself or anything, but usually the majority of time you will. I'm sorry, my phone's going off. The majority of the time, if you do have above a 3.0 and you have shown that you have a good progression of your grades, you will do well or probably get into any university you're applying to. Obviously, not Ivy League because that's totally different. That's very competitive. But any average normal school, average school, you'll most likely get into. But with the creative writing program or really any conservatory program, which I believe the creative writing program is not conservatory at Purchase, um, you will definitely have to go through a number of steps to get in. So yeah. Also, by the way, the school did not ask me to do this. This is kind of just me doing this for fun. But I just wanted to, read you guys my short story and kind of explain what it's about and talk about it. So yeah, I'm gonna get into it. So the story is called Lazuli, and I wrote it October of 2020, and it took me about 2 weeks to write. It's a short story, so it's probably only gonna be about 2 to 3 minutes long. Um, but yeah, it took me about 2 weeks to write it. I've written short stories before many, many, many times, but this was kind of like different for me because I always thought that I was a storyteller and not like a fantasy slash kind of like psychedelic writer. Like I didn't really see myself as that until I started writing this. So I'm gonna read it to you guys. Okay, so it's called Lazuli and it's a short story by me. A lonely childhood bedroom awaits a now young adult as they spring out of their innocence. It is only human nature for us to see new beginnings. Are they new beginnings or are they an end? Is an end just a start to a new beginning? The windows were all wide open as 16-year-old Michelle Marks walked into her room. The wind drifted throughout her room like a whisper. It was a 60-degree October night just before Halloween time. She strutted happily into her room, looking at herself in the mirror. Her room was dim, red filled the room, the lights from the full moon sprawled out throughout her bedroom. There was no need to shut the shades. She wanted everyone to see her change her clothes and stare at herself. The room always had an eerie familiarity. Even Michelle felt it at times. Even her best friend wouldn't like to go to her place. There always seemed to be some spirit in there. It felt like someone was watching them. Over the years, Michelle stopped caring about who was watching her. At times, she liked the feeling of being watched. It made her feel validated. Something seemed to be magical about the aura. A long time ago, she decorated her walls with memories of the past. Whether these memories were posters or her thoughts or something else, they were all over the walls. She stared directly into her eyes in the mirror as it got later and later. Her face looked so interesting. She could not take her eyes off herself. Her face felt like it was clay, that with every smile, every cry, she could mold it. Midnight turned into 1 a.m. When she usually gets home at night, she goes right in the shower, but tonight she wanted to sit in her filth. She liked feeling that she did something wrong. Instead of rushing to the shower, she liked living with her bad choices. It was nice to have the pain carry itself into the night, the pain of all her decisions. Following her back to her house, she used to think taking a shower would wash away all her problems. She later found out that a shower only masked those feelings. Her choosing to make bad choices made her feel that she was free. She was always curious where she inherited her dark brown eyes. Tonight they looked darker. She stared at herself for about 10 more minutes until a thought entered her mind. Someone told her a long time ago, you look different after you do something significant in your life. She did not feel different but almost awkward, standing there staring at herself. She then took each bit of clothing off her, sweater, pants, panties, and bra. Her body shook as she stared at herself naked in the mirror, feeling like she was crumbling down into a dark, winding spiral. She could feel chills up her spine, as if someone was breathing on her neck. It felt as if someone was breathing all up and down her body, a hot, heavy, musty breath. Her face turned from pale to blue. The mirror started fighting with her, slamming itself against her. It or what began to develop a face that seemed to look familiar and inviting, a look Michelle has only seen in dreams. But to Michelle's surprise, her frail body got pushed onto her bed. She grasped her mirror, fighting with it more, wailing. As she looked deeply into the mirror while fighting it, she saw a girl in pain, a girl that looked so similar to her. The girl facing her seemed to be a destructive version of herself. It was not the mirror attacking her that made her so fearful, but it is what she saw. She saw the girl looking back at her. Michelle started to get angrier and angrier while fighting. She fought so hard that she placed the mirror back on her dresser. Michelle tried to grab her desk chair, but felt the pressure of her mirror on her chest. She screamed for her mom or her brother, anyone that was in the house, but no one answered. Her mind wondered why her mom or brother were not coming to save her, but they never saved her before. Why would they save her now? Who could ever believe a girl was getting beat up by a mirror? Michelle reached for her phone but could not get a hold of it. Her reflection stopped fighting with her. Once she was comfortable and stopped fighting, her mirror went back on her dresser. She spread out crying on her bed in fear. Her body felt warm compared to her cold, naked body. Her bed started to feel like a cloud. While she laid there shaking, trying to sleep, so she would go far away from the nightmare in her room. Michelle sunk her hands into the sheets with tears running down her ears. She was not crying so much in fear, but was crying in sadness and pain. She knew why her mirror attacked her. When she looked in her mirror, all she saw was broken dreams, broken glass, and broken wishes. She barely saw her body. She saw all of herself come out. She saw nothing but sadness. What other girls saw was a girl who was confident, satisfied with her decisions. She was not happy with herself at all. Her body felt cold, laying there naked. She allowed herself to curl up in a ball, but felt selfish for doing so. Her childhood bedroom turned to dirt. Dirt from her garden came zooming through the windows, falling aggressively on her carpet. When Michelle heard the havoc coming from her window, she awoke from her fetal position. Looking nervously around, she quickly got up to put clothes on. The earth felt silky underneath her feet. Her room became a jungle. Instead of gray walls with posters, birds came out from the windows. A pack of hummingbirds flocked into her room. The hummingbirds surrounded her like they were her guardian angels. As soon as the lilacs, hibiscus flowers, and salvia appeared, the hummingbirds went running to drink all the nectar. Michelle looked around in awe, tumbling in the dirt. A place where birds and flowers were blooming. A place that used to feel so lifeless to her now felt like life. Her room became her secret garden. More birds flew into her room. Now there were robins, blue jays, and butterflies. Her brown hair became purple. The purple started at the root and went all the way to the ends of her hair. A surge of pain began to grow from her head. She winced in pain. The bird crowded her while she wailed in pain. It felt like something was growing out of her head. Then, as she thought the problem would get worse, everything started to feel euphoric. It felt as if the sun was shining over her. While crying some more in pain or happiness, a blue lotus flower emerged from her head. It bloomed into a full-blown flower. She looked at it curiously, as she has never seen a real-life lotus flower before. She smiled at the peak growing out of her head. For the first time in a long time, she felt a wholesome smile. Michelle ran back to her reflection, but she was very fearful at first, but began to trust the demented and inanimate object. She became the inanimate object. She is scared of her reflection, but when she finally saw who she is, who she grew into, a blue lotus flower came from the murky waters. So, that was longer than expected. I've read that so many times that my mouth is like, is there any, where the hell did I put my water? Well, I don't know where I put my water, but basically I wrote that to symbolize, so you could obviously interpret that any way you want, but I wrote that as to symbolize someone going through a growing process of someone who sees themselves as really insecure, maybe even ugly, maybe, just murky, like murky waters. They kind of don't even know themselves. They're just confused about themselves. And then, you know, a couple of amazing things happen to them and they see who they really are and they can look at themselves in the mirror and the mirror isn't fighting with them anymore and they're not fighting with themselves. So that was kind of my interpretation on, what I wrote, but it could really be interpreted any way. You know, if we're thinking about psychedelics and shrooms and acid, people do have trouble looking at themselves in the mirror when they are on psychedelics in general, so you can interpret it as that. Um, the blue lotus flower represents, and I have it on my shoulder. Well, I'm not gonna pull down my shirt, but I have a lotus flower right here on my shoulder. But the lotus flower kind of reflects something beautiful because it's this flower that's beautiful growing out of these really ugly, dirty waters, and you wouldn't expect a flower to grow out of, murky water. You wouldn't expect that, but it happens. We see it in nature. So it can happen in real life. It can happen to me, it can happen to you. You maybe grow up in a really bad household or something really bad happens to you when you're younger, or maybe even when you're older and you're in college or whatever, however old you are, and you end up being something beautiful because you make yourself that. So a lot of my inspiration for this does come from the lotus flower and the tradition of that, you know, and all of that. But it also comes from this book, which I really love, and it's called The Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz. He's an amazing author, like amazing. He has a couple of other books, The Mastery of Awareness, The Mastery of Transformation, and it's basically kind of like a, I guess, like self-help book, but not really because it's not giving you like rules on life. But this book really inspired me to write this short story because I think a lot of us think because we had maybe a bad upbringing or something that we don't have control over our actions, but that's really not true. We are the masters. Basically, that's, you know, it's literally the mastery of love. And then if you delete that word, he has a bunch of other books that are like the mastery of awareness, the mastery of transformation, um, the mastery of blank. Like, we are our masters. We are allowed to educate ourselves and grow, even if we did have a bad upbringing, even if something bad did happen to us when we were younger. We have the ability to grow. And that's what I really like about his book and this book in general. And yeah, so it kind of inspired me to write. Then Lazuli I actually got because the first, I don't know why I named it Lazuli, but the first, so one, there's a song called Lazuli by Beach House, which is a indie like rock band, and they're really awesome. And when I was 16, I went to Gov Ball 2017, which is this festival that's based in New York City, and Beach House was playing there. Never heard them before. I went. It was awesome. It was great. I love Beach House, and that was the first song that played. You can go listen to it, and I really liked it. So then my first like film I made, like screenplay, was also called Lazuli. Like I said, I don't know why. Beautiful, beautiful color though. Lazuli is a great color. Um, but yeah, that's why I named it Lazuli. So what I'm going to talk about now is, like the process of writing a short story, which I think if you are going into creative writing, let's say you're in high school right now, or you already are in a creative writing program, or you're an English major, I think this is something really cool to talk about with short stories. So with short stories, who the fuck am I? I mean, I have to bleep that out. But I, think that with short stories, it has to come from a topic and something that's really important. So it can be something about growth. It can be, one of my friends, he's actually writing this story right now about this pawn shop and how he meets different characters in this pawn shop. It ends up being all a dream, but each character represents these things that he's been through. I think when you take the creative route and maybe you take the fantasy route, I think it's a little easier to catch the reader's attention because like the other short story that I will post about that I did write is just a story about this old lady who finds, this photo book and goes back to her childhood. And it is meaningful, but at the same time, it's your basic short story outline where I think taking the route of not um, using an outline or the short story outline, it actually ends up being a much better of a story. So I think that's kind of like the advice I can give, even though I'm not entitled to even give advice. But that's kind of like how I like to look at it. Also, take inspiration from like stupid shit. Like just take inspiration from things in your life that don't like it doesn't have to be books, it doesn't have to be a movie. It can be a story someone told you. It can be about someone else's life. Currently I'm writing a story about this girl who finds her boyfriend sex tape with another woman and she finds out he's cheating on her and she ends up killing him. So like that's not something I ever went through, but it's kind of relates to a movie and it kind of relates to someone else's story. They never ended up killing their boyfriend, by the way. But you need to take things maybe that you wouldn't expect. Even like a fruit. I use a lot of like plants in my writing, which I I don't live in like like I live near the city, like I don't live in like a nature area, but you can take inspiration from anything. That's that's what I'm trying to say. That's really it. I'm going to be doing kind of like these uh I guess diaries. Is that even what it should be called? I'm going to be doing like these kind of synopsises, I guess, of the stories I'm currently writing and also stories that that I have written. So if you like this, give it a thumbs up, maybe subscribe to me. I don't know. You can do whatever you want. But yeah, that's it.